5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everybody, I hope you guys are okay, you're staying safe wherever you are. Today we will learn about the summary speech. So we'll learn about summary speech, practice writing summary speeches. First of all, we will look at the structure. So the summary speech contains introduction, summary of the debate. Summary of the debate consists of your two strongest arguments and your opponent's weakest arguments. So your two strongest arguments and one argument from your opponent, which should be their weakest. And the implications. So this thing is probably new to a lot of you, but I will teach you about it today. I've got some charts you can use to make it simpler, and I've prepared a nice, wonderful help sheet for you guys. So implications is what could happen in the future. But we'll talk about implications a bit later. At the moment, we'll just focus on the introduction and then the summary of the debate. But before we go any further, what should not be in the summary? No new arguments. Do not put any new arguments. Okay? Remember, it's your two strongest arguments and your opponent's weakest arguments. So no new arguments. Okay, every year when it comes to performance tests, there's always one or two students which add new arguments. Don't add any new arguments. No new arguments. I can't make this any clearer. How many new arguments should you have? Zero. So no new arguments. So introduction. I will now summarize the affirmative or the negative side of the debate. This is easy. So your points, so you two give your two strongest points and rephrase them. Okay, so why do I ask you to rephrase them? I ask you to rephrase them because you want to keep the audience interested, and it also shows you understand the arguments if you can rephrase them. So no control paste or control copy, control paste, no control C or control V. Just give your two strongest points rephrased, okay? So tip, if you still have any unused evidence, you can use it now. So no new arguments, but unused evidence that supports your argument, you can use it, okay? This is why I always give for homework, I tell you to do research when you're writing your FCS speech, even if you don't use the evidence, because I know it can come in handy during the rebuttal stage or the summary stage or the crossfire. So unused evidence, you could use it here if you want to. And your opponent's points. Your opponent's point, 1 point. So state their weakest point and the negation for it. So e.g., for example, their point is not relevant because their evidence was not related to the resolution. So you can use the negations we talked about in rebuttal. It's not a rebuttal speech, but remember to use negation. And explain to the judges why your arguments are stronger than the opponent's arguments. Maybe your side has used newer and more accurate statistics. So statistics from better sources. Maybe your opponent used Naver blogs as a source, whereas you have used Korean Office of Statistics. Some more trustworthy sources, maybe better logic linking support to arguments. This is for you to decide, or you and your partner to decide. Explain to the judges why your arguments are stronger than your opponent's arguments. So this is why, if we go back to the first constructive speech, I asked you to reference your sources correctly using a referencing system, so you can tell which sources are good, which are not. Okay. And final stage, implications. So this bit will be new to a lot of you, but think about the conclusion that can be drawn from a situation. So ask yourself, if my side wins, what could happen in the future? So you can use the optimistic method, so the happy method, or if my side loses, what could happen in the future? If you have enough time, you can do both, so you can be as creative as you want, but both are as good as each other. So optimistic, if your side wins and your arguments, they would happen, why it would be a good thing, or if your side loses, the opponents win, why it would be a bad thing. Okay, so if you look at the resolution, the death penalty should be enforced. So if the side is the affirmative side, why is this side correct? So for example, I wrote the evidence for this side is more reliable and comes from a variety of sources, variety of different sources. What will happen if my points are true? The crime rate will decrease because people will be too afraid of the death penalty to commit crimes. So focus on the picture, focus far into the future. So far into the future, crime rate will decrease because people will be too afraid of the death penalty to commit crimes. So it will happen a murder will happen, and then it will go all over the news, all over SBS News, that the person who commits the crime will be sentenced to death. People will be too scared to commit that crime because they don't want to die. This is me focusing far into the future and focusing on the big picture. So the big picture being that when someone commits crime, it goes over the news, and if it says person who committed murder to be sentenced to death next month, that will be front page headlines, it will be on news bulletins, it will be all over SNS. Therefore, people will be scared to commit these crimes in the future because they don't want to die. So yeah, hopefully you can see the link there to focusing far into the future. Because when we focus far into the future, we are more persuasive, okay, and focus on the big picture as well. So implications, more questions to ask yourself. If your side is the debate, how will it affect our daily lives? Will it make us safer? Will society be fairer? Okay, so you don't have to answer all of these questions. Maybe some of these questions aren't relevant to the resolution, in which case, ignore them. If they are relevant to the resolution, then ask yourself, does my implication answer this question? So, question number 2 here, if I'm going back to the death penalty, will it make us safer? So you can see that I wrote here, the crime rate will decrease because people will be too afraid of the death penalty to commit crimes. I think I've answered this question. Maybe I could add an extra sentence to make this more persuasive. Maybe I could just add that this will make Korea even safer, something like that. Will society be fairer? How will it affect our daily lives? Maybe in this last resolution, question 1 maybe not relevant, so I won't ask myself this. And same with question 3, not relevant to that specific argument. However, if I wanted to argue on fairness, I could talk about implications about making it a fairer society. Remember, we could use pessimistic method. So first implication I gave you, I used the optimistic method. How wonderful our society would be if we had the death penalty. So big smiley face, because people would be scared of the death penalty. Therefore, people wouldn't commit crimes, which will make Korea a safer place. So that is an optimistic method. Whereas if I was to have a pessimistic method, I could say if the opponents were to win, people would carry on committing crimes, receive weak punishments, and it would not be fair for the victims and their family if a murderer was to walk away free. So yeah, I hope that this is clear. And some useful phrases you can use. You don't have to use these, but these are just useful phrases that are short, simple, and easy to understand. This is important because ding, 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 ding. The implications of this argument are ding, 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 ding. If we win this debate, ding, 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 ding. If our side is correct, ding, 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 ding. So yeah, these aren't fixed. You can change them if you want to, but as you can see, they're all very simple and easy to understand. And just to review the summary speech structure, you have introduction, your 2 strongest arguments, so just 2, reword, rephrase these arguments. Your opponent's weakest argument, a negation, so rephrase 1 of the other team's argument, state your negation. Tell the judges why your arguments are superior to the opponent's. And implication, reminder of why your points are important and what will happen if your points are true. So this could be optimistic method or pessimistic. Remember, optimistic is positive, pessimistic is negative. Optimistic, what will happen, which will be good in the future, so happy. And pessimistic, negative, what will happen in the future if your opponent wins and he's going to be sad or scary. Okay, it's up to you. You can be creative with that. Okay, to make implications easier, we have different methods. So we have mind map, ripple effect, and timeline. Okay. So these are just 3 charts that make understanding implications a little bit easier. These 3 methods are good for different types of resolutions. So you may think about our current resolution and think that 1 or 2 of these doesn't make any sense to you. That is fine, but for other resolutions, they may work. So mind map, which you guys probably should be familiar with, just like this, just like brainstorming. So immediate effect, focus on a smaller area, result of the first effect in a big area, effects of the effect, focus on bigger area, second effect, focus on bigger area, third effect on bigger area. So yeah, you can think of, if there's 3 possible effects, you can think of them and think of it on bigger area. So for example, if we did something along pollution, let's say we had focus on renewable energy, because we did renewable energy previously, and about building wind turbines. So let's say we're going to build lots of wind turbines in Incheon. So could be effects. First effect could be on house prices around the wind turbines. House prices would decrease. If people would be decrease, maybe people would lose money if they bought their apartments for high prices. I mean, it's worth less than before. Maybe lose money. If they lose money, less money to spend in the economy. If there's less money to spend in the economy, it can cause job losses. Or another way of thinking about it is if we built wind turbines in Incheon, let's say we built them in Incheon Nonhyundong. I live in Incheon Nonhyundong. It would be loud and noisy when it's windy. As a result, people will move out. So maybe I move to Songdo where it's a bit quieter. If people like me move out of Incheon Nonhyundong, local businesses would suffer and there wouldn't be much left of Incheon Nonhyundong because of people leaving. So yeah, these are just a mind map. You guys will be familiar with this, but you can use it to brainstorm, to think about implications. We'll look at the ripple effects. I actually designed this a few years back. So yeah, I'll just explain this quite simply. Smaller area, larger area, and even larger area. So if I was to give you an example, let's choose our current resolution. So zoos are beneficial for animals. So I will be on the affirmative side of the debate, so I agree with the resolution. And I'll give you an implication. I'll give you a pessimistic implication. So if my opponent was to win the debate, if they were to win the debate. So yeah, the small area I will have is closing zoos. If we didn't have zoos, children would not be able to learn about animals and their habitat. If people can't learn about animals and their habitat, the next thing that would happen is children would be unaware that they could be harming animals. When they go out, when they go hiking, maybe they leave their trash there. Maybe they leave their Coke cans there. They leave their trash. When they're older, they carry on leaving their trash. And what happens is animals can get stuck in there. And we start seeing a reduction on animals on hiking trails. But the bigger effect of this is not just the children or when they become adults, it's that they vote. And when they come to vote, they will elect leaders which don't care about animals. If they don't care about animals, they will enact policies which destroys their habitats, the endangered animals. So if students were to do this, students were to grow into adults and elect politicians which do not care about wildlife and about animals, we'll see more rainforests chopped down so we can get wood and build more houses, which will mean endangered animals become extinct, so more animals become extinct. So all I've done there is just expanded on the idea, thinking what will happen. So it's all gone from, if we shut down zoos, zoos are a place where people learn education, so young people learn education. If they don't get that experience at the zoos, They will not be educated about the need to look after animals and understand their habitats. So therefore, when they go out, when they go hiking, when they go camping, they don't respect that environment, which will harm animals in that environment. They will also grow up doing the same thing, and when it's their turn to vote, they will not care about wildlife and animals and vote for politicians that will destroy the environment, which will make it worse for animals in the long run. Therefore, closing down zoos, if we're not using it as a way of educating our young people, our students of today, our elementary school students of today, in the future, it will be the animals that suffer as a consequence, as an implication. Next one, if we have timeline. So yeah, timeline. This one's actually really good for economics. So in the cost, how much things cost. Or if you're trying to quantify things, say the amount of things. So for example, if we went back to the renewable energy resolution, I think it was Korea should invest in renewable energy. If we were to talk about the implications of using fossil fuels, if I was to do research and focus on the amount of oil left in the environment, the amount of oil left in Earth, I could point out in 10 years we will have used another 20%. In 20 years we'll have used another 35%. In 50 years, our oil sources will almost be depleted. In 100 years, they'll be depleted, so no more oil left. So yeah, this is just purely an example. So yeah, I always get this, teacher, which method should I use? Short answer is whichever one you want, whichever one fits best. So some issues work better with ripple diagram. So social issues, I strongly recommend that one. And mind maps also work well for social issues. Some issues work better with timeline. So anything economics based, money based, I find that works best with timeline. However, any method can be used for any resolution, whatever you guys feel most comfortable with, feel most familiar with. So yeah, give you another example. So the implications of this argument are that if we don't allow immigration to Korea, then the working population will decrease each year until we reach a point where there aren't enough people working and paying taxes. This is important because we want to maintain our lifestyle. Implementing the affirmative side of the resolution is the only way to keep our country prosperous. So yeah, focusing on implications, and this is for the resolution we just covered before the end of the semester. So immigration is beneficial for Korea. So yeah, that is the implications, and I started it off by using a pessimistic outlook, but I turned the pessimistic one into a positive one. So if we want to keep our country prosperous, this is what we must do. You can improve this by adding statistics if you have some. If you haven't already used your research to demonstrate this, you can do that. But this is just a basic example of how to use implications. So, summary speech example. Today's resolution is immigration is beneficial for society. So, transition your team's points. So, one of our other points was the negative side has said, rephrase their argument. However, this is not necessarily true. They could not provide actual numbers to prove that this is true. Explain why your side's arguments are better than your opponent's arguments. So this example is come from the resolution, immigration is beneficial for society, beneficial for Korea. So the implications of this argument are that if we don't allow immigration to Korea, then the working population will decrease each year until we reach a point where there aren't enough people working and paying taxes. This is important because we want to maintain our lifestyle. Implementing the affirmative side of the resolution is the only way to keep our country prosperous. So yeah, as you can see here, I've gone for a pessimistic approach. So yeah, you can use whatever approach you want, but this is just an example of using implications. So summary speech example, so we go through all of it. So today's resolution is immigration is beneficial for society. Transition your team's points. So one of our points was, our other point was, the negative side has said, then rephrase their argument. However, this is not necessarily true. They cannot provide actual numbers to prove that this is true. Explain why your side's arguments are better than the opponent's. So if South Korea permitted more immigration, this would eventually lead to a clash of cultures. Clashes of cultures can lead to race riots, as seen in many Western countries. This is important because we, as Koreans, pride ourselves on having a peaceful culture and society. So yeah, this is just an example. So what I want you to do for your in-class assignment is to write a summary speech for the side assigned by your teacher. So the resolution is immigration is beneficial for society. So the side I will assign you will be the side that you were for your first constructive speech. Use the two strongest signpost arguments for your side and the weakest signpost argument for the other side. Remember to create implications. There's a help sheet on Rio School available for you. But yeah, just use the side that you were assigned for your FCS speech. For your two strongest arguments, if you want to work with your partner, you can do that. And your opponent's weakest arguments, just ask to see your opponent's first constructive speech. You guys are all friends on Kakao, so you should be able to do this. And your homework will be to finish your summary speech by next lesson. So yeah, hopefully this is easy for you guys to understand. There is a help sheet online, so yeah, feel free to download it, shoot me any questions you may have, and it's your first time doing it, so it doesn't have to be perfect, just give it a go, okay? And remember, you guys said you wanted lots of group work activities in your feedback forms, so I can do my bit by giving you opportunities to work together. This is an opportunity for you guys to work together. So any questions, shoot me an email. If not, good luck, and hopefully our next classes will be on Zoom. Okay, take care.
That's all, folks.